Hi everyone, my name is Louis Goros. I'm the Managing Director and Head of Distribution for Kingsbarn Real Estate Capital. Today we have a very special guest. We have Mr. John Heidelman. John, how are you today?
Louis, doing well, thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So John, let's start off with, tell us a little bit about your background in real estate.
All right, so part of the time I got involved in DSTs, I was an individual businessman and property owner. So I started investing in, first property I owned was the building that my auto parts store, an auto paint store was in. And then later on I bought that as an investment property and managed it as an investment property. And then while I had that business going, I started investing in apartment buildings down in Long Beach.
Okay.
And I owned 2 8-unit apartment buildings, that's residential real estate, and owned those for 20 years. So that was my background in real estate prior to the transaction that led me to Kingsbarn.
Before you chose Kingsbarn and the DST, what other options were you considering if you were?
So I had a goal, after I retired in 2019 to spend more time working on my real estate because that was going to be my primary source of income for retirement. I had some other income, but the bigger chunk of my investment was really in real estate, and I looked at that for my retirement income. So the one thing I needed to do is I needed to upgrade the quality of the real estate I was in from like a C property. I had like C, my store was kind of a C property, and my 2 apartment buildings were like maybe C plus properties, are in good shape. But again, I was looking to get into kind of an A category of property because they're easier to manage, especially in retirement. So I was looking to upgrade the quality of the real estate. That was a goal I had. So I originally engaged a company called Step Real Estate. Okay. Rob Stepp is the owner, tremendous guy, knows the Long Beach submarket where my 2 apartment buildings were. Was referred to him by another friend of mine that's also a big apartment building investor in Long Beach. Mm-hmm. So I met with Rob and his sales rep, Travis Treywick, who worked through the transactions with me, and we ended up selling those 2 properties. So they showed me a transaction they'd done for another client that they had, and we decided to sell those properties and then my goal was originally to consolidate those 2 properties into a larger apartment building that would be easier to manage.
How did Kingsbarn align with your personal goals?
Well, here's what happened. So the market kind of, from that point when I met with Rob and Travis, the market changed. The pace of transactions really got very hectic at that time. It was very, what do you call a hot market for real estate. Mm-hmm. So a property would hit the market, it would sell within 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
And sell for, in some cases, either a pretty good premium over prices that had been there historically. So it was a very hot market, and that presents a problem for both the buyers and the sellers. From a seller aspect, which I was, the biggest problem is then you're going to wind up in a 1031 exchange. And so, I went out looking for my ideal large apartment building, and my wife and I traveled across the country with Step. They showed me maybe 9 or 10 different transactions. We flew down to Florida and looked at stuff. We were looking at stuff in Ohio, stuff on the East Coast, stuff in the Midwest. We went up to Nevada.
I remember those calls.
We went all over the place, and it was frustrating because we just couldn't find solution adorable from a real estate standpoint. But during that time frame, they mentioned, hey, look, we have these Delaware Statutory trusts. That's an option for you as well. But as time wore on, as I got further into my 180 days and I'd identified a Delaware Statutory trust as part of my 45-day document, it became clearer and clearer to me that the DSTs, I had to spend more time investigating those. So I did. And I looked at, first Step introduced me to Kingsbarn, and that's when I got involved with you, and met Jeff. And then it was very, really a lot of, you guys did a good job of educating me about the Delaware Statutory Trust. I also talked to K Properties, and I got a chance to compare their value propositions to Kingsbarn. It was clear to me that Kingsbarn was a much better fit and was going to be superior to anything K could offer me. So that's went down that road with them, and went into the 1031 exchange and property. I had 3 down lake properties. As it turns out, when I went to work with Kingsbarn, I actually did 4 up lake properties. And during that period of time, it was the same story. The market was very hot. You guys would bring a DST property to market. The thing would sell out in about a week or two. Mm-hmm. And so if you really weren't decisive about, knowing what you want, having an opportunity to do normal due diligence in that time was a bit of a challenge. Mm-hmm. But, again, the information that I needed was condensed enough to the point where I could do that in that period of time and make good decisions. And I'm happy with the decisions that I made.
Now, for somebody that's considering Kingsbarn and the DST, what advice would you give them?
Well, I think, Kingsbarn really, I think number one, you're going to want to go out and explore the marketplace. But I think you're going to find, as I found, that Kingsbarn is really kind of refreshingly different than, let's say, K or any of the other DST people that are out there. And that's that they have an array of investment ideas and properties that are unique to their organization, rather than just sort of the same thing repackaged over and over and over again with maybe not as attractive deals. For example, with K, they would package like 3 and 4 and 5 properties together like a bundle of properties, and with different returns on them and different problems associated with those. But you can't when you're diversifying in a real estate thing. What you're really trying to do is create your own form of diversification that meets your goals, not create diversification that helps K meet their goals. For me, the advantage with Kingsbarn is that they were able to help me I really wanted to get out of California. I didn't want to invest in real estate in California, especially I did not want any further. All my investments were in residential real estate. Mm-hmm. State of California was a very difficult environment for residential providers, and I decided to get out. So as it turned out, I invested in Wisconsin, I invested in Pensacola, Florida. Yep. I looked at investments in Texas, I looked at investments elsewhere, and then wound up with an investment in Torrance, as well as the other 3 locations. And I doubled down on the property in Pensacola, Florida. But I was able to get the geographic diversification I wanted. Mm-hmm. I also got diversification in the sense that some were shopping center properties, mm-hmm. were single tenants with triple net leases, and the other was a multi-tenant office building mm-hmm. product with, let's say 20 different tenants in there. That gave me some diversification. Mm-hmm. So clearly I was able to obtain the returns I was looking for. They're a little bit better with Kingsbarn. And I was able to get the diversification that I thought would help me from a risk standpoint.
What did that do with your cash flow prior to?
Well, if you were to compare my C properties to my A properties, I was unlevered in my old properties, and mm-hmm. I took a levered approach with Kingsbarn. And you get a little bit of a lift from in your ROIs with a levered property, not as good as having equity. Mm-hmm. But my return on equity, was probably about 50% better than what I was getting. I was under market on my rents and things and my other properties, and really wasn't that well informed. I was meeting my goals and so on, but it was really a awakening for me in the sense that I could achieve diversification and achieve all these other things that were important to me from a risk management standpoint, mm-hmm. and still get better returns.
And then once you decided this is the route that you want to go, tell us about your experience with Kingsbarn and our team.
Well, it's one of these things that's like necessity is the mother of invention, or another cliche would be time is money. So in my case, with 180 days to go, let's say I was down now to in that last 30 days. So I had to put my 1031 transactions and documentation together, mm-hmm. and actually consummate I'd already consummated the downleg properties and sold everything, and I had all that in escrow. I had to, at that point, put the transactions and paperwork. That only took about a week, 2 weeks, because it was really more a matter of maybe having 2 weeks, 3 weeks of due diligence to do. It's very important that you do your due diligence and get educated, but you can't know everything going into something for the first time. So a trust factor was important for me. I flew out to Nevada and met with Jeff and had a long talk with him, and really satisfied myself that this was the right company to work with, and that sort of trust level that I established with Louis and Jeff initially was fantastic, and it really got us and my wife, more comfortable with the transaction. We moved forward rather decisively from that point.
Thank you for that. So to piggyback a little bit on what we just spoke about, if you had to hone in on one thing that separates Kingsbarn from the other sponsors out there, what would you say?
I say they're innovators. If you look at they're not kind of locked into a single product and a single kind of transaction. They have a variety of properties. Mm-hmm. They're not locked into one geography. They're across the country. That's hard for other providers to provide, especially for real estate people to do. When I was looking at real estate, it's very difficult for a real estate company to find properties on the other coast. Although, Step did a great job of taking me to Florida and so on and so forth. But it's difficult for them to have that kind of reach into the marketplace where a Step had coast-to-coast reach and had different kinds of products to offer me that I could consider. And it's like in location, they say in real estate, but in finance, and I have a background in finance from my MBA at USC, it's diversification. So you have to kind of balance your returns with your risk, and that's where the diversification comes in.
Now, would you recommend Kingsbarn and our products to other investors?
Already have. I mean, in several cases I've been asked to talk to potential investors and mm-hmm. give them advice and listen. A big part of that is just being a good listener, kind of hearing what their concerns are and hearing their story, mm-hmm. tell them a little bit about my story, and seeing if there's any kind of collective, similarities there, mm-hmm. and then giving them some advice on, when they're going into this for the first time, some things that they need to be doing that wouldn't be normal part of what a landlord might do. Most of the people were like myself that I talked to. They were landlords. They own property. They own multiple properties. They had lots of management headaches. They had loss of investment headaches. They had pressure from government headaches. They had tenant headaches, all those kinds of things. The condition of their properties was an issue for them, so on and so forth, and they were trying to upgrade their property. So it's just a matter of saying, hey, here's the advantages that you're gonna get, and here's some of the things that you're gonna need to deal with. There's way more advantages than there were disadvantages. It's an easy decision.
As you're seeing Kingsbarn grow and evolve, do you have any feedback or any suggestions on how to improve?
Well, you already anything I could think of, you've already done. So it's a little bit. You guys are always like one step ahead of anything that I might think that would be. When I first talked to Jeff, he created a vision for where you were going to go. The nice thing to do is, having been with you for a couple of years now, to see that you've actually achieved some of those goals that you have. I'm a very goal-driven person, mm-hmm. so when I heard what your goals were for your business, what Jeff was talking about, and mm-hmm. then see how far he's come. Recently you guys just brought a big apartment property online up in Reno, Nevada area, up in that area up there, and actually built that, from the ground up. Mm-hmm. So that was a goal you guys had. You had these other things, and you've actually done things beyond that. So it's really gratifying to see how much you've grown, and to see how you've actually even innovated and created opportunities for investment with existing investors like me that are of interest to me and some of my friends.
And before investing in Kingsbarn and into our DST program, did you even hear about a DST before?
No, I never heard of a DST before Rob Stepp and Travis Trewick brought it to me. Mm-hmm. But since then, I actually have met another friend of my wife's who's been in DSTs for a long time, and we sat and talked about DSTs with my wife for about an hour, and talked about her experiences in it, and just reinforces my belief that I'm with the right company.
So it's safe to say that your expectations were met.
Oh, I would say, yeah. I mean, it's like, have there been issues? I mean, sure. I mean, it's real estate. Anybody that's been in real estate for any length of time knows that there's going to be issues that are going to come up. It's more a matter of what you do when you encounter those issues, and that's really probably another area where Kingsbarn shines. We have a property down in Torrance. They had a big anchor tenant that moved out, and it created some cash flow issues. How did they manage those? Well, I mean, number one, they were fantastic about communicating that it was coming. They didn't, what were they going to do about it? How are they going to replace that tenant? And it's been really, the thing, I would say they overperformed, because the amount of time it took them to replace that tenant, replace that cash flow, was far shorter than I would have thought it would take them. I think most investors that have been in real estate for a while really understand that these, vacancies, it just kind of comes with the territory, and it's something you have to prepare for, and it's something you have to plan for. But it's just more a matter of how you executed that, and how you've turned that around, and then what your plans are for the future. The communication has been superb. What was going on in the property, what you were doing to mitigate that problem, when that might happen, and how you were doing that was all being communicated to me on a monthly basis. And I could always call in and talk to your controller, Rusty, and ask him what was going on, and it was just fantastic. So from my perspective, that trust level's there, because I know that if problems do come up, you're going to deal with them, you do it quickly, and you're creative in terms of the solutions you can bring forward.
Who specifically did you work with at Kingsbarn?
Well, I work with you. Then I would say Rusty Oster is your controller. He's been great in terms of giving me some advice I needed. It was very valuable to me. And then Jeff. So those are the three people that I would say that Jeff is for new, after about 2 years of owning the first 3 or 4 DST investments, I made another investment in another DST here about a year ago. And that one's here in Las Vegas, and we're very happy about that. It's another multi-tenant office building. And we drove by it on the way out here today. And
so we did.
Very happy to have that. It's a smaller investment compared to the other ones we have, but it's a fantastic piece of real estate, and it really met my objectives, and I was really grateful that I was able to find something when it came time to make a transaction. So instead of having one asset, I have 2 now. So I have the DST, and I have my new building to replace the building that I sold and traded into the DST. So
best of both worlds.
Yeah, it's great. Well, it's a great way to grow your wealth over time and diversify your real estate holdings.
Are there any helpful tips that you'd give to someone that's considering investing with Kingsbarn and into a DST specifically?
Yeah, I think the hard part for people that come from kind of a owner-manager, owner-operator kind of mentality is all the other things you need to do, from a finance standpoint, from a tax standpoint, and so on and so forth, from a legal standpoint. Fortunately, I have, a little more sophistication in that arena. I would say, when you make these investments, make sure that you follow Kingsbarn's direction and advice about getting advice from your financial advisors, getting advice from your legal advisors, understanding, the documents that you're signing, and doing a good job of going out and seeing the property and talking to, the Beltway property. I went out and met with, I looked at a couple of different alternative investments. I met with the property managers that manage those things. I walked through, I met some of the tenants, walked through the space. Take the time it takes. Go up and meet with Jeff. Go up and, go up and see their operation up here in Las Vegas. And take the time it takes to make a good choice so that you're comfortable with it. After you've made it, you don't have any regrets. In my case, I'm very, very happy, very pleased. But I took the time to do that, and I think that's a good idea. If you're in a big, big hurry, I've met some people that are really in a bind. They're down to their last, couple of weeks, and they really have to make a big decision. Other people, they're in a better position time-wise, and they can actually do all of that.
Well, I think we covered a lot.
We did.
Is there anything that we missed, or anything else that you'd like to share about your experience?
Well, just how grateful we are. This has really been a life-changing experience for us in some respects, and it's not only met my objectives and goals to get into that A property and improving my cash flow, but it's done it. In terms of my involvement, I still have a level of involvement that's appropriate for a retired person, but I've continued to look at investments, other types of investments. Louis, you've done a great job about making me aware of what you're doing in the marketplace today and what are some of the other investment opportunities I have, as we talked about this morning.
That is true. Well, John, I really appreciate you carving out some time to speak with me today, and
My
thank
pleasure.
you for your continued business.
Absolutely.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
It's a two-way street.
It is.
Thank you, Louis.
You're very welcome. Thank you, John.